things that's making me crazy right now is that pretty much everybody in America, or the majority, or the media, or something, have drunk the Kool-Aid that education equals a product, or education is a commodity, like a box of bolts or a refrigerator, something you buy at the store, or you trade, somehow. And the kind of dominant metaphor is that education is a business, and being educated, and you get an education like you get a product. The clearest indication of it is the cover of Time magazine on December 8th, 2008, right after the election. Do you remember this cover? You might have seen it. Michelle Rhee, R-H-E-E, the superintendent of the Washington, D.C. schools. You know, Michelle, are you from Washington?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm afraid I'm going to put Michelle Rhee down. Sorry. Is that okay? Okay, sorry. I apologize, but I'm going to do it. The story has a beautiful picture of Michelle Rhee. She's a 38-year-old Korean-American woman. She's got a very fierce look, and she's wearing a power business suit. She's got a big slash of red lipstick and a broom in front of her. And it said that the thing is, how to fix America's schools. And the pivotal paragraph in the story reads like this: Michelle Rhee has done more to reform Washington, D.C. schools in a year and a half than most reformers have done in a decade. She's closed 39 schools, fired 280 teachers, fired 100 central office workers, and fired 39 principals, period. So it's like Enron or GM or something. She's run it like a business. There's not a word about bringing resources into this starving system. There's not a word about connecting parents to the schools. There's not a word about kids' motivation. Not even a word about test scores, which is supposed to be their bread and butter. The problem with the way we're talking about education is we're acting as if it's not a right and a process, but it's a product that you consume. So, one last point on this, it could go on forever, but up to points. One is that education, if you think about education in a democracy, ask yourself, what makes it distinct from education in any other system? Okay, so let's just take some other systems. Soviet Albania, fascist Italy, medieval Saudi Arabia, apartheid South Africa, all of those school systems wanted their kids to stay away from drugs and crime, show up on time, do their homework, master the subject matters. We want that shit too, right? So we all agree, right? Except we don't agree, because those systems also teach as a core value obedience and conformity. And you would think, at least theoretically, that in a democracy, you would teach the opposite. Not obedience, not conformity, but imagination, initiative, courage, entrepreneurialness. I don't know, a bunch of qualities that are not about getting in line, doing what you're told, finding your place on the hierarchy of winners and losers, and then averting your eyes when people are marched into the ovens. No, that's not what we do. That's not what we should do. And therefore, we should ask ourselves, are we living up to that democratic ideal? And finally, every government, every social system, every organized government, the reactionaries like to say liberals want to tax and spend. That's such a dodge. Reactionaries want to tax and spend too. Everybody wants to tax and spend. That's all governments do, as far as I can tell. They tax and then they spend. And who they tax, and what they spend on is the only question. So, in my view, and I think from your question, probably in your view as well, we ought to be spending much more on education, healthcare, and basic minimum standards of living. That's what we ought to spend on. And we ought to not spend on war, militarization, recruitment, ROTC, incarceration, and surveillance. Let's get rid of those things in favor of generous spending on education. In Illinois, we have within 5 miles of each other a school system that spends $35,000 per kid per year to educate their children, and a school system that spends $5,000 per kid per year. That's not worthy of a democracy, because then you're saying, you know what our policy is for children? It's simple. Choose the right parents. If you choose the right parents, it's all going to go swimmingly for you. If you choose the wrong parents, tough luck, buddy. Kick to the curb. That's not right. So yes, education, we must change the debate, change the discussion. Yes, sir.
Professor
Woods Fund of Chicago, we gave some money to Acorn, but I was very skeptical of Acorn as an organization. I think they do some good things, as far as I can tell, and some not so good things. But they are a community organization, and I'm a huge believer in community organizing. I don't think Acorn is the only model. I mean, one of the things that I did when I was in this position in Chicago is I argued that the Chicago model of community organizing, which is very much the Acorn model, that is knocking on doors and getting power blocks together to fight for a certain kind of reform, is only one model. There's another model that I like very much, which is kind of comes out of the Highlander folk school, or comes out of the thinking of Paulo Freire in Brazil. And this is the notion that organizing is not simply about low-level politics in the sense of winning a demand or winning, but it's really about education. Organizing can be thought of as kind of education for life and deeper consciousness raising. Do you guys know the Highlander folk school? It's worth finding out about. It's where all the civil rights activists in the 60s trained. And Rosa Parks was there the summer before she sat in. And Martin Luther King trained there, and Andrew Young, and Ralph Abernathy, and the SNCC kids. SNCC was founded at Highlander, actually. It's a wonderful, and it was run by a brilliant guy named Miles Horton. And so I think that community organizing takes many forms. Acorn is one form, but there are many others, and I tend to support it as a, you know why I support it? Because I think community organizing is the essence of what's made progress in this country. What was the abolitionist movement, but a kind of community organizing? What was the suffragette movement, but a kind of community organizing? So pick your community, get organized, and let's make progress for justice and peace. Yes, ma'am?
Yeah, can you talk about the internet as a means to organize and a space for political discourse, and how that could change or potentially dehumanize community organizing?
You know, one of the things that I think is marvelous about now, I was arguing to some students earlier over dinner that I don't buy the whole generational bullshit about, you know, I'm a person of the 60s and you are people of whatever you're of. I don't buy that because I'm as much a person of this generation as you are, and I'm still here, and I expect when the revolution comes, you'll push me to the barricades in the wheelchair. That's a metaphor. But you know, I think that, you know, I said earlier that I don't think that it makes any sense to talk in terms of decades. I think that's all myth and media. I mean, I don't remember on December 31st, 1969, looking at my watch and saying, "Oh shit, it's about to end. I better get laid or something." I mean, it just doesn't work like that. You know, the world it keeps going. The world keeps going. So the idea that we had everything right then and everything screwed up now is bullshit. So I think that we have a different moment that we're living in, and one of the things that I think is important is not to let the kind of mythology of the 60s sit on us like a kind of a wet blanket, like everything good happened then and everything now is less than, or is kind of in light of. It's not true. And one of the ways it's not true is exactly the internet. I think that communication, access to information, not always knowledge, but information, humor and art are some of the great aspects of today that we should not underestimate. There's a reason that Jon Stewart and Stephen Colbert and The Onion are the most reliable sources of information in the country. I couldn't live without them. I don't trust NPR as far as I can throw it. I can't stand their soft little stuff. And I know I listen to it like an addict, and I read the New York Times. Absolutely, I feel like I'm putting heroin in my veins sometimes. But I do those things. But it's really to Jon Stewart